good day to brew, baby? What is up, YouTubers? What Millsy? Back with Hometown Commander, referring to another episode of Millsy Updates, show where I update my decks for you, whether they be in the main deck or the test box. The goal of this show is to periodically update the decks that I have in my deck box. And today we're covering one of the main decks. Today, we're talking about Alela, Artful, Provocateur, shown here in her most recent Secret Lair printing, a printing I really love, and the version I have as my commander. Alela is a deck for me that's always been a ton of fun. A 4-mana Esper 2/3 Fairy Warlock, flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. And whenever we cast an enchantment or artifact spell, we'll create a 1/1 fairy. And that's what we built Alela to do. In fact, more particularly than otherwise, we built Alela to cast enchantments to make fairies. Most of our enchantments are going to be focused around making our creatures bigger, making the 1/1s bigger, whether they be because of their typing, or the fact they have flying, or many of other buffs. The goal is to make them bigger. We'll use our copy type enchantments that we have in blue, things of that nature, to either copy the buff enchantments or copy other general great value enchantments. And then the artifacts in the deck come from our mana rocks. Being able to get 1/1 fairies when we're playing our mana rocks is really important as well. And then we're going to have ways to draw a ton of cards, get into our answers, keep building our board state, and just shut down our opponents in the air and have them have to deal with a bunch of 3/2, 4/3, 5/4 fairies in the air as they attempt to deal with our board state. Well, as far as making fairies goes, the really cool part about Alela is that we have to remember that all the artifacts and all enchantments make fairies. Meaning all of our mana rocks and a lot of our value pieces make fairies. So things like Midnight Clock or Mox Amber or Mox Opal all make fairies. And Alela is a deck that I have purposely pushed a little bit high up on the money and power value scale. So we are playing some 0-mana artifacts. We have things like Skull Clamp, which can clamp one of our fairies as long as we have no other buffs out to get some good value and draw some cards. But hey, for just 1 mana, we're getting another fairy. We got things like Bitter Blossom that not only, if Alela's out, make us a fairy when we cast it, but then make us a fairy every turn so that we can continue to get more and more of them. Black Market Connections, again, is a piece that will make us a fairy, but also has an ability we can choose every turn to generate value, create a treasure, draw a card, and make another token if we want to, but mainly we're either making the treasures or drawing the cards there. And then a card I absolutely love, it may be 8 mana, maybe Mimi, but it's a card that I've seen win me games multiple times with Alela, and that's Legion Loyalty, an 8 mana white enchantment that says creatures we control have Myriad. So when that creature attacks, you're going to make a copy of it that's tapped and attacking another player, each other player. And this is a really important ability with this deck specifically, because then we can take our entire board of tokens, attack one person, and have an equal amount copy of them attacking everybody else. And for certain buff pieces, that can mean a really huge board state of fairies that our opponents have to deal with. One of those being something like Coat of Arms. Coat of Arms says that each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. And this is a way to end the game very quickly in a deck like ours, because our fairies start getting larger and larger. But if we can take advantage of Myriad or other abilities, we're going to deal big damage. The other thing to remember is that the fairies are in the air, and that evasion is going to already give them some trouble for our opponents. What I like so much about the way that this deck is built is once this engine gets going, our fairies are going to eventually be bigger than the average dragon or the average angel, the two decks that I think have the best chance to compete with us in the air. And then we really have a chance to just outclass them at what they're trying to do. Strixhaven Stadium is an alternate win con for us, and one I have seen happen a few times. It says whenever a creature deals combat damage we can tap it to put a point counter on it. If a creature deals damage to us, we remove a point counter on it from it. But whenever a creature we control deals damage to an opponent, we put a point counter on it. Then if it has 10 or more counters on it, remove them all, and that player loses the game. Strixhaven Stadium is great because it can help you knock out the right opponents at the right time and start really making the game a little bit easier for you if the fairies aren't going to already do it themselves with the damage. Cthulhu's Crusade makes a ton of sense. We're going to get multiple fairies in per turn, hopefully. That adds counters around, makes our fairies even bigger and even harder to deal with. Favorable Winds and Flowering of the White Tree, both just adding +1/+1 to different varieties. White Tree actually adds the positive that Legendary creatures get +2/+1 in Ward 1 instead. This will give Alela a little bit of protection, but a card I've always really liked in the deck because it's very good while it's out is Etchings of the Chosen. This is a 3-mana enchantment that when it comes in, you pick a creature type. The creature type gets the +1/+1, but it says for 1 mana, we can sacrifice a creature of the chosen type to give target creature indestructible for a turn. This is really nice as a way to potentially protect Alela from a board wipe and stop us from losing every one of our creatures and just keeping Alela around so we can rebuild the next turn. That it's more beneficial than you think of. No, won't stop us from those single pieces of removal, but I think anything to help will help. Tangible Virtue, giving them +1/+1 vigilance. Rally the Ranks, giving all of a chosen type +1/+1. And then a card that I can't believe I hadn't added in before now, but makes a ton of sense, is Starlight Spectacular. It says Parades. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we choose creatures we control one at a time until every creature's been chosen. And each of those creatures get +1/+1 for each creature chosen before it. This is really important because in a lot of turns, right, we're going to have a set of fairy tokens that are in this that have already been in this turn that can attack, and we're going to have a set of fairy tokens that have come in this turn. What I like about Starlight Spectacular is we're going to start with the fairies that came in this turn, since they can't use their buffs or their small buffs, and then start going up to the ones that are already in this turn, getting massive buffs, right, in combat, and start dealing damage in the air. The one thing that I realized very quickly was going to be good was copy enchantments, right? These are enchantments that come in and copy an enchantment that's already in the battlefield, or for example, something like Mirror Maid, it can copy an artifact as well. Most of them require us to control the enchantment, but some of them can copy anything. But the important part here is they can either copy a key thing that we already have down, potentially copy our opponent's things, or really most of the time they're going to copy a key thing that we have down and get us a second version of it for even much more value. I really love a card like Estrid's Invocation because it gives you the opportunity at each of your upkeeps to bounce it, to blink it and have it come back in and copy something else instead, allowing you to just continue to get value on the right things when you need it at the right time. We do something fun like Court of Vantress that can just become a copy of something else, another enchantment or artifact. But if you're the Monarch, you just get a copy of it, a token copy of it instead, allowing you to do what Alela does, which is want to have the Monarch, want to be dealing damage and defending ourselves, and just be getting more extra copies of all these important things. Sprawling draw cards, though, there's a lot of ways to do it. But I think combat effects like Biding of Thassa are some of the easiest ways. We're going to have fairies that are in the air that can be very hard to block. And so creatures dealing combat damage to a player or one of our opponents is going to be easy. And that is going to allow us to draw cards that way. One of the only decks in my deck box I have the One Ring in is Alela because it's just such good draw. And because Alela has a lifelink, we're going to be able to pay off the fact that we're going to lose life to the One Ring as we draw. And then Kindred Discovery just ends up being a machine gun of draw. Whenever the creature of the chosen type come in or attacks, we get to draw a card. We're ideally going to be making multiple fairies a turn, meaning that this is just going to keep loading cards into our hand and keeping them going. I realized that I didn't put it in the slideshow, but we're pairing these enchantments with things like Hallowed Haunting or other things that just take advantage of enchantments coming in for big value. Ethereal Armor and all that glitters on Alela with all these enchantments down. I'm really taking advantage of the enchantments we have laying around. But recently I did add a couple cards from the newest sets, and I think it's really important because I think all three of them play a huge value. Patchwork Banner got brought in from Bloomburrow, and it makes a ton of sense. Pick Fairy, all fairies get +1/+1, and you get to add a mana bay color. That's a slam dunk, even in a deck that has 0 mana rocks, because the more fairies we have, the more of a buff that is, and the more important it becomes. A card that I actually got to take advantage of in the last week or two playing this deck that worked out exactly as well as I had hoped was Dollmaker's Shop and Porcelain Gallery. The Dollmaker's Shop site says whenever one more non-toy creatures attack an opponent, we make a toy artifact creature token. The side I really cared about was Porcelain Gallery there on the right. Creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. This is really important because with all the buffs, this is going to raise the floor on all of our creatures, right? If we have 6 creatures, they're now automatically base power and toughness 6/6s, and then they get all their buffs. This is also really good for Alela because now Alela herself becomes a bigger threat, having lifelink and death touch and, threatening commander damage on our opponent. And I'll be 100% honest, Whip of Erebos is probably a card I should have had in here long before now. I'm not entirely sure why. My guess is probably the price. The reprint of the commander decks in Duskmourn there did help it a little bit. But I don't think I ever really stopped to think about how good Whip of Erebos is in a deck like this. Think about it. If we have a bunch of 5/5s laying around, let's say we have 5 of them, right? 4/3 fairies or 5/4 fairies, and we attack. I mean, we're netting 20 life, which is going to help pad us out and have us to only really have to be worried about commander damage, right? And now it becomes something our opponents have to deal with. And then we have the option to reanimate a creature with need be. We don't play a ton of actual creatures in the deck. We play more... enchantments and artifacts than anything else. But it is nice to know that we could get a creature back if we needed to. But I think just for 4 mana, lifelink's a beautiful thing, allowing all of our creatures to gain us life and just really profit off of what we can do there. But I say it on every episode of Millsy Brews, and I say it again in this series. No deck's ever complete. It's maybe a deck that I've had for a long time, and I've really been working on it, but I don't believe that it's ever done. I think that it's always changing as we see new cards come out. It can make us think about different things. And on the latest round of testing, I've really been thinking about, am I drawing enough cards? I think the deck has good card draw, but maybe getting even more is that thing that I really need. And so the cards that I'm considering in this round of testing care all about card draw. We're thinking about adding more of these on-hit drawing effects like Coastal Piracy. Do we want to see more of them? Is that the thing that maybe would take us over and really allow us to push ourselves forward that way? But the other 2 cards I thought about, since we care about enchantments and we can pay them off, was Necrodominance and Necropotence. This is 2 black enchantments that skip our draw step. Necropotence says we can pay a life to exile the top card of our library face down, put that card into our hand at the beginning of our next end step. Necrodominance says that at the beginning of our end step we can pay any amount of life if we do draw that many cards. Now, Necrodominance comes with the downside of whatever a card or token will be put into your graveyard from anywhere you exile instead. And Necropotence, of course, says it's just whenever we discard a card, we exile that card from our graveyard. But I think I like this idea of paying life for draw. This is a deck that generally has no problem with life, with Alela having lifelink, and things like All That Glitters and Ethereal Armor that can really buff her up and allow you to gain a lot of life at once. And I think it might be worth it to use something like Necropotence or Necrodominance to fill our hand. Necrodominance does reduce our hand size down to 5, which I guess is a little bit of a downside, but I don't particularly mind, because what tends to happen with the Alela is you dump your entire hand out, and then you're just top decking. You might have 1 or 2 cards left in your hand, but you're just kind of top decking. What I like about Necrodominance is that we can refill our hand and allow us to keep going. Same thing with Necropotence, pay a bunch of life, get a bunch of cards in hand, and next turn have that gas and have it ready to go for the next turn. I'm still kind of musing around that idea, but I think it seems like something that may be viable for us. But let's get into our playtest. Keeping a 1, 2-lander Arcane Signet, Phyrexian Altar, Talisman, and Bident of Thassa. Phyrexian Altar is great, of course, to sack those fairies for mana. And we have Karn's Temporal Sundering, one of the only extra turn spells I play, just because it bounces something and does what we want it to do. But turn 1, we see Confounding Conundrum. This is a card I really like in this deck because it helps us against all those pesky landfall decks. So when it comes in, we draw a card, and it says whenever a land comes in under our opponent's control, if that player had another land come in, they have to return a land they control to its owner's hand. This is very helpful to kind of stop our opponents from amassing too many lands in that process. I think we'll go ahead and crack that Polluted Delta to go ahead and get our Rafine's Tower. Get all 3 of our types down just in case it becomes a thing. Turn 2, we'll play that Sunken Ruins. I think we'll play the Hierarchy. That way we have all 3 of our colors of mana, so we should be able to get down a turn 3 Alela here. We see Valgavoth's Lair, a great card. That is an enchantment. It won't count for Alela's ability because it's not a spell. But the important part is that it will count for things like All That Glitters or Ethereal Armor. So that's why Valgavoth's land, even though it doesn't count for her ability, is still very important. It comes in tapped, right? So we don't really want to play it this turn. Let's play the Hall of Heroes Generosity, and then we will just have to pay 1 life from the Talisman for Alela. This is important because now, as we get into the next turn, we can start slamming down these mana rocks and things to generate value as we're kind of ramping up. We see the Darkar Waste off the top. My question is it Better or worse than getting the Laren? I think it's better, because we can go Arcane Signet, make a fairy. We've got now 4 mana. We can either Biden of Thassa or we can Confounding. I kind of like the idea of doing the Biden of Thassa, only because Alela is going to attack this turn and inevitably hit somebody. I doubt anybody on turn 4 has a really good block for Alela in the air with Death Touch and Lifelink, drawing us a Whip of Erebos, which is a really great one. This turn we'll get that Valgoth's Lair and tapped. I guess we'll pick... We got white, we got blue, across a bunch of sources. I guess we'll call it white. It doesn't particularly matter, but we sit here with 6 mana. I like the idea of the whip. I mean, Karns could be good as well. But I kind of like the idea of getting more things onto the board. 6 mana, I think I like the idea of, let's see if I have double black here. I was thinking whip plus maybe Confounding Conundrum. Come in, draw us a card. Make another fairy. Then we'll play the whip. Make another fairy. All our creatures have lifelink. We'll take a big attack this turn, right? These are all 2/1s. So we're getting 10 life this turn. Inevitably, we're probably going to end up drawing a couple cards just due to hitting players in the air. We might have to pitch one here. But I think that's okay. We got Utter Significance there for some removal. Fellwar Stone for some mana. Heraldic Banner for some buffs. Skull Clamp, right, can be a non-bow sometimes, especially with something like a Tangible Virtue down there. But we could use it now to get, right, some draw before we start putting our buff enchantments down, right? Heraldic Banner is still nice with Skull Clamp because it's only +1/+0. So I think I do like the Vigilance, though, too. And I guess Starlight Spectacular would make it not as important. I guess we'll pitch the Virtue. I think we still got a good hand. And like I said, the nice part about the Spectacular buff is we can clamp anything we want to before combat and then still use that Spectacular buff. So we gain 10 life that turn, right? Drew a couple cards. For the next turn, we see Urza's Saga, a land that I really enjoy because it allows us can go get a mana rock of our choice. So here we're sitting at, 8 mana. A lot of things we can do. I like the Starlight, but, I mean, we could just as easily, if we think about it, go, Fellwar Stone, get a fairy, and Karns, right? We control Alela, so we can do it. Take an extra turn, bounce something, and then move to combat, attack, right? All got lifelink, all in the air. I think we're going to inevitably end up drawing a couple cards. Something we're not going to be able to stop. I think we'll end up probably here just pitching a land, and maybe that. I think we're pretty darn good here, but we'll go for our next turn, right? Since we just got the ability to do it off there. Our Saga goes to step number 2, and I think we go Starlight Spectacular, get the fairy. I've got 5 mana left. I'm thinking Heraldic Banner, get the fairy. 5 down, -3 down to 2, +1 for the banner is 3, so 3 mana left. 2 for the favorable winds, get a fairy, and then leave up 1 for the Swords to Plowshares. Now all the fairies have an immediate +1 or +2/+1 buff here, +3/+1 because of Alela. We're gonna go to combat, do the Starlight Spectacular, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pick Alela for 8. Now we got a big attack, right? More damage in the air. I think this is really what the deck's trying to do, right? Build up the board, build up the buffs, get the damage in, and work the thing that way. So let's get into playtest number 2, keeping a 3-lander, Shipwreck Marsh, Mystic Gate, and Sea of Clouds for our lands. Another one of those Confounding Conundrums. Another Biden of Thassa, Flawless for the protection, and then Blind Obedience to get our opponent's things to come in tapped. I really like Blind Obedience. I think it's an important card because things coming in tapped is a huge deal, especially here where it includes artifacts as well. It can really help slow our opponents down and force them to deal with things, right? Kind of like the idea of Bitter Blossom, though. Get the party started, right, on having some creatures here when we finally get Alela down. Here in turn 3, I guess I'll just play that Conundrum, draw the card, start getting my opponents to deal with that. No life lost, and another one there. And this, I guess we'll get Alela down here a little bit slower here on turn 4, but I think it's okay. We already got the fairies started up. In the air, we're going to get at least 2 damage in. This turn 5, another one. That's going to come in tapped because we don't control a swamp, but that's a-okay. Still 4 mana. I'm thinking Heraldic Banner for blue, right? Because all of all the fairies that Alela makes are blue. All the ones that Bitter Blossom's making is black. So I guess the question is, which do we prefer more? I guess I have more black ones than blue, so we'll say black, but it is going to be a non-bow if somebody gets rid of Bitter Blossom. I guess my only thought here on blue is I can make more of them per turn. So we're going to say blue, only Alela and that 1/1 getting the buff, but now I've got 2 mana, and I'll go that Blind Obedience. Getting our opponent's things in tap, we can start extorting if we want to. Get a couple attacks in with Alela and the fairies. This turn, get another, we draw Copy Land. This is a card from Modern Horizons 3 I was happy to add in, allowing you to basically copy a land, which can be very beneficial when you're down on lands or when you need another land. I think I'll have this come in as a copy of Shipwreck Marsh. So now we've got another land down here, so that was 3, so we've got 4 left this turn. 2 of it for the Orzhov Signet. I think we should have them. I know I need the white, right? I could go 1-2 for it there, and then I can get the double white for flowering. Just to get, again, another buff. Take some attacks here, really put the pressure on our opponents. We have Flawless to protect the board. And now this turn, Drowning Courtyard will come in tap, but right, we play the Bident of Thassa. And now we attack. We're just going to end up drawing a bunch of cards here this turn. And again, we keep the Flawless up to protect the board. I really like a board state like this because here's 1 protection. This turn, we're probably going to draw at least 5 or 6, if not more. And we're just going to continue to set ourselves for the next turn where we can keep getting things down. That's kind of the play cycle I built Alela for. Play things down, leave up protection, attack, deal damage in the air. This turn, there are only 3 2s with Alela, plus that bluff from the Heraldic Banner. Next turn, we're looking at things like Patchwork Banner, or we'll find some more things in the deck, right, to get that party going. We can start drawing with Castle Lochthwain as well, if need be, but I think this Bident of Thassa will just continue to refill our hand as we search for more and more options. Let me know, what do you think of my brew for Alela down in the comment section below. It's a deck I really enjoy, and it's a deck I've had a ton of fun kind of making my own and being something I enjoy, so I'd love to talk to you down in the comment section below. But we'll catch you guys next time.